Welcome to our lesson for today. So, remember, we have been talking about Queen Esther, and last time we talked about how Queen Esther was brave and how she walked into the king's presence. She was scared, but she walked into the king's presence and asked him and made a request to him. And she knew that if you go into the king's presence without his permission, you can be killed. But she was still brave, and she went before the king and she made her request. And her request was, she invited the king, and this is King Xerxes, and she invited King Xerxes and Haman, his prime minister, his second in command, for a dinner that she had prepared. So she invited them for dinner, and at that dinner she told them, I'm going to have another dinner tomorrow night. And she invited the both of them to come back. And remember, we also talked about Mordecai. And we said Mordecai was finally rewarded for saving the king's life. Haman took him round on a parade on the king's horse, dressed in beautiful robes, and he was taken round, and now he was finally rewarded for saving the king's life. But this made Haman angry and jealous, because Haman, remember, he did not like the Jews, and he especially did not like Mordecai, because Mordecai refused to bow to Haman. So now it's time for Queen Esther's second dinner.
So now Esther has already arranged the second dinner. Remember, there was the first one and now it's the second one. And at this second dinner, Haman was sad and he was quiet. He was not talking. His heart was troubled. But the king was happy. He was smiling. He was in a good mood. He was in good spirits. And he was drinking his wine as he was looking at Esther. And then he looked at Esther and he asked her, what do you want, my queen? Name anything that you want. Even if it's half of my kingdom, I'll give it to you.
So the king has asked Esther, tell me what it is you want and I'll give you anything. So Esther tells him, all that I want is for my life and the lives of my people to be saved. I don't want us to be killed because of one man's evil, wicked plot. All of my people are going to be killed. Please, I don't want my people to die. When the king heard this, he got angry and he asked, who is this man? Who would dare do this to my queen? And Esther raised her hand and pointed at Haman, who at this time, Haman's face had gone white because he was so scared. And then Esther said, this is the man who wants to kill all my people. And the king got angry at Haman. He got up and he walked out of the room. Now he was outside and he was walking. He walked up and he walked down and he walked up and he walked down, and all because he was angry at Haman for trying to kill his queen and all of his queen's people.
So now the king is angry, Haman is terrified, he is worried because Esther has already exposed his actions. And now back in the house, Haman was kneeling down and he was trying to ask the queen to show him mercy. And the king outside, now he's come back in and he found Haman as he knelt down and he asked Haman, how dare you come next to our queen? And then a servant came to the king and he told the king, Haman had built a place for Mordecai to be hung.
Yes. So when the king heard that Haman already had a place to kill Mordecai, he said, no, don't kill Mordecai. Kill Haman instead. Hang Haman instead of Mordecai, and then make Mordecai the prime minister. So Mordecai was going to be second in command. And Haman, because of all of the bad things that he had done, he was going to be killed. So Haman was dragged out of the room and he was terrified and he was shaking, but he was dragged out of the room because all of the bad things that he had done, now he was going to face the consequences. Then Esther turned to the king and she said, please, please change the law, change the order that says my people are going to be killed on the day that Haman chose. But the king said, I can't change a law. Once my laws are made, they cannot be changed. But I will give you permission to add anything to that law that will save your people, and then I will seal that law with my royal seal.
So now, since the law cannot be rewritten but only changed, so Mordecai went and added to the law, and he wrote that the Jews are allowed to have weapons. And these weapons, they were to use them to defend themselves on the day that they were supposed to be killed. And so this law was written. And when the day came that the Jews had to be killed, they had weapons, and everyone was afraid of them, because now everyone knew that Mordecai and Esther, they were both Jews, and the king was on the Jews' side. So everyone was afraid of the Jews, but the Jews, they did not spare their enemies.
So, until today, the Jews still read the story about Esther. So on the day they were supposed to be killed, instead of dying, they get to read this story about Esther and always remember how Esther was brave and how she saved their lives. So children, what we learn from this story is that God has the final say. Remember, Haman had made all of these plans and preparations. He had gotten everything ready so that he could kill all of the Jews. But God had the final say, and he was able to save all of his people and get rid of the threat to his people. So we need to remember that as children of God, even in our lives, we need to always remember that God has the final say. So now it's time for us to sing our song. So everyone stand up and help us sing this song. Okay kids, it's time to sing our song. Now we've just learned that God has the final say. Haman had made all of these bad plans. He was going to kill Mordecai. He was going to kill all of the other Jews. He had all of these bad plans that were going to hurt God's people. But God changed all of these plans. He turned all of them around because God has the final say. So everyone stand up and help us sing this song. Who has the final say? Jehovah has the final say. Who has the final say? Jehovah has the final say. Jehovah turns my life around. Jehovah turns my life around. He makes a way where there seems no way. Jehovah the final say. Who has the final say? Jehovah has the final say. Who has the final say? Jehovah has the final say. Jehovah turns my life around. Jehovah turns my life around. He makes a way where there seems no way. Jehovah has the final say. Jehovah turns my life around. Jehovah turns my life around. He makes a way where there seems no way. Jehovah has the final say. Yay!
So kids, today we've learned about how Esther went and told the king about the plot against the Jews. And when the king heard of this, he was so angry and he wanted Haman to be hanged. And Esther asked the king to change the law that stated the Jews should be killed. But the king said, these laws cannot be changed, but you can add on to the laws. So today we'll be making a scroll to remember this. So we have 3 manila papers which are cut in the same shape, and then one we'll fold it to make one side of the scroll, and the other one will also fold it to make the other side of the scroll and put the remaining one at the middle. So we'll start with coloring each manila paper. So pick your color of choice and color the outside of your manila paper. So after coloring one side, we'll also color the other one on the outside. So after coloring both sides, we'll now color the middle part of our scroll. Just color it however you want. Now, after coloring, we'll now fold one side just fold it, and then you staple it together. Staple on both sides to make sure it does not come out. So you staple the other side also. So after stapling, we now write the middle part of our paper.
So take your pen, and first thing we're going to write, and make sure you write at the center of your paper because one side is going to be covered by the rolls that we've just made. So at the center of your paper, we need to write where we get today's story from. So today's story is from Esther chapter 7 and 8. So at the center, I'm going to write Esther chapter 7 and chapter 8. So when I look at this, I'll remember that our story for today comes from Esther chapter 7 and chapter 8. But our memory verse for today comes from Genesis chapter 50, verse 20. So write Genesis chapter 50 and verse 20. And it says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good." Because Haman had made all of these plans to destroy the Jews, but God turned it around. So you intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. So now when you open it, we're going to put our scroll together so that when we open it, we'll see this message. Our story for today, which is from Esther chapter 7. And we will also see our memory verse for today, which says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good.
So now we'll staple the middle part to the two sides that we've made. So staple them together to make one big scroll. So after stapling, you can roll it together to form a scroll, and then to seal it, we'll use a rubber band. So just put the rubber band in the middle to hold together our scroll. There you go, we have our scroll. So this has been our lesson for today. So until next time,
Bye!